Welcome to WLNM's original English light novel review with your host, Zeke Changuris.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 2 of the rebranded WLNM, the OELN podcast. The rebrand is because we're also starting a second channel called Chugawa, which just simply stands for Two Grown Adults Watching Anime, a general discussion about current and past anime, all with the fundamental underlying principle is that we're only building up what we love. We don't tear down, so you're not going to see anything that says why you should hate this program or this is trash, which I think is just cheap ways to score points. So keep watching this space for some fun guests and discussion in the future. But today on the OELN podcast, we are joined by novelist Jio Kurenai, whose work includes Parable of the Renegades, Volumes 1 and 2, and Parable of Shuxiang Academy on the web novel site Honeyfeed. Welcome back, Jio. And
Hey.
How you doing?
Yeah, it's good to it's good to talk to you again after such a long time. There's well, I guess I hope to say that I've become a lot better than how I was the last few years, and I was really excited. I was really happy when you approached me for this. So thank you very much. I'll do my best to
No problem.
make it worth it.
No problem. Hey, I mean, for many of us, this is our side gig, and my real life world just kind of caught up with me, and and I just couldn't keep the pace up, so I had to put everything on hiatus and just focus on, the job that pays the bills and not the one that makes me happier. So here we go.
The same for me.
Yeah, I know it's the same for a lot of us who are in this. So you, in the intervening time, you've put together a second volume of Parable of the Renegades. Is that going to be a straight continuation of what you did in Volume 1? Are you seeing this concluding soon, or is this Volume 2 just the second step in many?
Okay, so Parable of the Renegades Volume 2, or Para Rene for short. That's in case this is your first time hearing about it. It is the continuation of where Volume 1 ended up, but it's not going to be the conclusion yet, because the first story arc for Parable of the Renegades is planned to span 3 volumes. Starting Volume 4, it will begin a new story arc that is based on what the overarching plot of the story is. So
how about just give us a quick reminder from Volume 1? What is our story arc? What is our plot? Give us a synopsis.
Okay, so the main plot established in Parable of the Renegades Volume 1 is that this this closeted adventurer named Lucas Thorne has been living a rather safe but mundane life because he secretly desires a thrill of adventure, but is also too cautious to venture out into the world because he knows that the world he lives in is overrun, or not really overrun. There are these mysterious race of evolved humans called renegades, and the thing that makes them so dangerous is not because they can cause mass destruction or anything. It's because people don't know much about them. Despite the number of years that they were known to exist, there are no official records of renegades. So nobody really knows what they can do, and because of that, it's the fear of the unknown that's keeping many people, including him, cautious. There are those who aren't, who are not really concerned, but for the most part, it's just simply the fear of the unknown. But then one day, Lucas ends up coming across this assassin named Rio Kyodera, who he accidentally witnessed in the middle of an assassination gig that she was doing. And after a bit of a wild chase and not really begging for his life, but a certain quality of his entices her, she decides to give him a chance to live by blackmailing him into a contract where he must hunt down this list of targets that she's going after, and all these targets are renegades who live in different countries. So this is going to be the adventure that he had been wanting for so long, but it's going to be a dangerous one where he must travel to different nations, as I'm calling it, instead of countries, and learn about the renegades firsthand. This is supposed to be like part of the journey is discovering every bit of information of what the renegades are, because he's also like writing a journal that details every bit of information he discovers.
Okay.
Now,
So what kind of setting are we dealing with? Are we dealing with modern? Are we dealing with fantasy setting? What kind of world is this taking place in?
so it takes place in an alternate modern reality where it's in modern times, like around today, but Parable of the Renegades is an urban fantasy, so there are some supernatural elements, especially that involve the renegades, and it's an action adventure because the main protagonist Lucas has to go to knows that the targets he's been trusted to go after. I mean, he's been forced to go after live in different locations around the world. So part of what I hope to showcase is that as Lucas ventures into each nation, it will be like venturing into another world, because each nation will have its own culture, and it's also something that he wanted to experience. He wanted to experience he's a fan of anything foreign. So this is both like his wish being granted, but it's also being done so at a dangerous way, since his life depends on it.
Yeah, I mean, when you work for an assassin, it can't all be a day at the beach, I imagine. So,
Yeah. Oh, he lives near a beach, so that's something. And the thing is that Lucas has never done anything like this before. He's just a normal student who was living a normal life, but now that he's been thrust with this, he's gonna have to start learning things that he never thought he would have to do.
okay, so you really enjoy the world building aspect of this, I imagine, since he's going to these different places and you have to build them out.
Yeah, it's like a lot of fun looking up both the weird and wonderful of different countries that I've come across. Some I've traveled to, but never really had time to study the most, because back then I wasn't that interested in history or viewing the sites. That was me. I was like young, way younger back then. But things have changed. But now I haven't traveled anywhere because of the pandemic and because there was no other good reason to. So I'm kind of channeling all of that here in my story.
Okay, well, you've started another story over on the web novel site Honeyfeed, Parable of Shuxiang, Zhang or Zhang?
It's pronounced Shuxiang.
Shuxiang.
Almost the N and G is almost silent. Almost. You can still say it, but
Okay.
don't stress on it too much. Shuxiang.
Shuxiang Academy, the Parable of Shuxiang Academy. And so is this something set in the same universe or?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. It is. It's set in the same universe. So the Parable of Shuxiang Academy is a spin-off slash prequel set several years before the first volume of its main series, Parable of the Renegades. So it takes if Parable of the Renegades takes place in the West, the Parable of Shuxiang Academy takes place in the distant East. And contrasting Pararene's dark urban fantasy action adventure style, Shuxiang Academy is a more light-hearted tale centered around a fantasy martial arts school where the mystical concepts of kung fu have become real after years of being proven false scientifically. How about I start this off by reading the official premise of the Parable of Shuxiang Academy from the Honeyfeed website.
Sounds great.
All right. So the premise goes like this. Shannon Gray and her twin brother Alan were inseparable. However, everything changed when Alan was scouted for his talents by a mysterious school. Then several years after Alan had moved abroad, Shannon is suddenly invited to rejoin her brother at his school, a school that somehow turned the mystical aspects of Kung Fu into reality, despite science once proving them false. Intrigued, Shannon follows suit. However, a reunion with her brother was not her only reason for accepting his invitation. From an ulterior motive she developed while separated from her twin, to the school's insane training methods, Shannon begins a path that will turn her life upside down upon her arrival at Shuxiang Academy.
So you've hooked probably some readers right there with the mystery aspect of what's going on here. And are we seeing this story from her perspective?
So yeah, there are two plots that actually take place in the Parable of Shuxiang Academy. So the main plot focuses on the character I mentioned originally, Shannon Gray. She is a foreign exchange student from my universe's version of the UK, and her childhood was like mostly about being compared unfavorably to her twin brother Alan, and these were things beyond her control because ever since they were like, let's just say, born. Their parents believed that they should have equal opportunities in everything, so they made them do they put them through all sorts of activities together, and it eventually turned into a sibling rivalry on like who could become better in all of these things. And it was like everything: school, the arts, academics, and but it was sports that where the twin siblings got like really heated up in their competition. And well, Shannon lost almost all of them. And the one thing that people often come to me at is that this is a girl who has a rivalry with a boy. And understandably, yeah, I get where they're coming from, because boys generally have a more advantageous biology compared to girls. But their sibling rivalry was from a time when they both have yet to hit puberty, so they were roughly equal physically, and they were also there. That's also partly why I made them twins. It was something that also helped make their similarities much more consistent. But when Shannon is invited to join her brother at Shuxiang Academy, she learns from some rumors that the school is known for being able to turn any person into like something beyond peak human condition. And it's implied that in Shuxiang Academy, gender becomes an obsolete aspect, and it's more about how hard you work than what you already got. So this is something that Shannon wants to. So Shannon is like, even though this it was all beyond her control, her rivalry with her brother has been drilled straight into her head. She really like any kind of victory she has doesn't feel like the victory she wants unless it was against her brother. So after being separated from him for so long, this is like finally her chance to settle things with him. So she accepts his invitation, but just trying to meet the journey to reuniting with her brother is already a challenge in itself, as she learns firsthand that there are many trials that await her at the academy. And like there's a lot of it has its own culture that I hope my readers will enjoy. And something I want to say about Shuxiang Academy is that Shuxiang is an alternate word for Shenzhou, which means zodiac, as in the Chinese zodiac.
Okay.
So, so Shuxiang Academy would literally be like Zodiac Academy, and that's because it has its own brand of kung fu that is separated into 12 different styles that I call paths. So let's say there's like path of the dragon, path of the snake, or path of any other animal that exists in the Chinese zodiac. The thing about these paths are that these are not like fighting styles in a sense, but they're more like augments you can that you can combine with any kind of background that you have in order to like create this new combination, and like become this how it's hard to hard to explain on the fly. But here's something. Let me recite a few things for you. Each animal of Shuxiang Academy represents a certain skill that all of humanity has potential in, and they're all represented by a keyword. So, like starting from, let's say, the rat path and going forward, the rat path has a specialty. Its specialty is in deception. So those who choose to like align themselves with the rat path, they learn all sorts of skills that involve deception, and then they can combine it with any kind of background they might have in order to create something out of it. It's like learning how to cook in a specific style and using what you learn from that to your own, and combining that with your own knowledge to create your own kind of specialty.
Okay, I kind of see what you're saying. It's almost as if it's you're trying to manifest the attributes of the zodiac characters or the zodiac symbols
Yeah.
into a fighting style or a way to approach
Not really a fighting
things.
style, but more of like like I said, it's an augment. And something I want to say is that the way that I'm treating the word kung fu in this story is that I'm making it lean more towards its original meaning, which is superior strength through energy, space, and time. So like patience and time, not space, patience and time. So something that a skill that you develop a mastery of after endless repetition. Something that you like really you like. It's almost like you're killing yourself to become a master of this. So almost every character, nobody in Shuxiang Academy says I know kung fu. Rather, it is I attained kung fu in this. Like, for example, I have a character who actually is a former child soldier, and you can say like she has attained kung fu in guerrilla warfare. That's an example.
Okay,
So she combines her background in guerrilla warfare with one of the 12 paths. Specifically, she is she is a student of the goat path, which and that path specializes in precision. So she has become this former child soldier with perfect aim, and she's also learned how to like what's this? For example, make herself appear like she's teleporting by quickly moving at the same time she sees her opponent blink.
okay.
That's what I mean by precision. So yeah, there are many characters who have their own backgrounds combined with one of the 12 paths. So I'm hoping that like there's a lot of potential in what you can accomplish with that.
All right, that's very intriguing in the way, I mean, and very detail oriented in your world creation skills there.
So let me give you this one. So Shannon and her brother Alan are both have a background in sports that are used in the Olympics.
Okay,
So that's what they're going to be trying to combine with one of the 12 paths. So that was just the main plot, but there's also a B plot in the Parable of Shuxiang Academy, and it focuses on another character named Zadrian Lee. He is a longtime Shuxiang Academy student who is revered as a god by most of its residents. And his story is that he's trying to unravel what he believes to be a conspiracy going on behind the scenes at the academy. So, like the parts of the story that focus on Shannon is like the light side, and it mostly takes place on the day, while Zadrian's side of the story is like behind the scenes, so something more dark, and it often takes place at night.
so how in writing, how are you? Do you try and thread these A and B plots together, or do they stay separated for much of the story?
They stay separated for much of the story, but I'm planning that they will eventually intersect somewhere down the line.
Okay,
Like to keep things easy to follow between Shannon and Zadrian. Like I'm making the beginning, at least the beginning of their story, individual stories, separate at both time and location. But there are some aspects from both sides that affect the other.
All right, that makes sense, and it might be. I mean, for me, just keeping one plot thread going the entire time is a challenge enough, but to have two going sounds like a lot of juggling for for the creator.
It was because the story, the original plot was just supposed to be about Shannon, because the Parable of Shuxiang Academy was originally written as a contest entry in the Honey Feed X My Anime List contest
Okay.
from last year, and it was the thing is, like, I was already planning for a long time about Shuxiang Academy when I was writing Parable of the Renegades, and this contest is what inspired me to like bring that story, start writing that Shuxiang Academy story that I've been planning for a while, but it was never like fully fleshed out. It was like just the basic idea of everything. So, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish on time for many reasons. But
We we've all
regardless,
been
yeah.
there. Yeah. So,
Regard-
anything else? Anything else you'd like to add about Honeyfoot? About anything else you'd like to add about Shujan Academy?
Okay, so one thing I wanted to bring along was when writing this the world when world building for this location was that I wanted to limit my characters from something like they were gonna get in Shujiang Academy. It's kind of like this special environment there allows anybody to literally train themselves to become superhuman. Like going like this. That's one of the aspects that the location in Shujiang Academy mysteriously offers. So one thing, while they were getting like these superhuman, not really powers of some sort, it's more of techniques. One thing I wanted to take away from the characters was the use of technology. So in the world of, I mean, in the island where Shujiang Academy is located, the technology is soft banned, and almost everything there does not run on electricity. And this is a story that takes place in modern times. So there are characters who have like these reactions to like feeling like they've been thrown back into the past. The main character Shannon gets a wake up call when she finds out that there is no Wi-Fi. There's no Wi-Fi and electricity in Shujiang Academy. So all this time that she's been taking pictures with her phone, she's not going to be able to do any. She's not going to make much use of them.
Yes.
And there are also many characters in the story who like to pretend that they've never heard of what a cell phone is. I would
Sure.
love to read a passage from like that part where all right, so I'll start from this part.
Alrighty.
Shannon then scrolled through all the pictures she had taken since her arrival on the island. With the time she had left, she figured she'd use it to update her social media with snippets of her new school life before going to bed. Huh, that's odd. My mobile data is not working here, she said to herself. I don't want to fake a British accent, so I'm just gonna speak the way I usually do.
Go ahead.
Phone wasn't detecting any signals either. However, Shannon remained optimistic and assumed she was just in a bad spot. She stepped outside her room, where a Dragon Path student was passing by the corridor after a trip to the boys' bathroom. Yes, hi. Do you know where the Wi-Fi is around here? Shannon asked as soon as he looked her way, only to be met back with a blank stare that momentarily went down. Wi-Fi? The boy's response rattled her a bit, but Shannon guessed it was just a language miscommunication. She nodded with a nervous smile. That's right, Wi-Fi, so my phone can connect to the internet. She held her smartphone to the boy's face, but that barely affected his expression. He then knocked on the door behind him. A female student emerged from her room with an arm rubbing her eyes. Huh? What do you want? I was just about to sleep, she slurred. The boy quickly apologized and directed her to Shannon. Excuse me, but can you help her? She's looking for something called Wi-Fi. The girl slowly blinked twice at them and said, Wi-Fi? Never heard of it, before slamming her door shut. As soon as Shannon processed their exchange, one of her eyes began twitching as her hands slowly lost their sense of touch. The boy shrugged with a sigh. Sorry, we weren't much help. I guess Wi-Fi is something that only exists in your nation. By the way, what do you call that rectangular object in your hand again? Oh, you dropped it. was it made of glass? Countless birds living near the dragon and the neighboring rabbit and snake path temples suddenly scattered into the sky and formed a makeshift cloud above Shuxiang Island. Apparently, they were frightened out of their homes by a scream that sounded like the end of the world.
Well, it seems like a rude awakening for her.
Yep. So, because of the lack of electricity or technology, people have resorted to doing things the old-fashioned way. But as one character pointed out, hardship can build character. So this is one of the challenges that Shannon has to overcome in her stay in the academy, and this is really weighing a lot on her because if she fails, like if she ends up failing and has to like get if she gets expelled or anything like that, she will know that she just wasted her parents' money and all the effort she took to travel all the way to another nation just to so this she'll feel like all of the times being compared unfavorably to her brother, it's going to really hit her like, yeah, it's actually true, you really are the inferior sibling. That's why there's like a lot of things weighing down on her, and she's really determined to make everything count. So this is just one of the first steps she has to take in her new school life.
Okay, that very interesting uh, premise we get there, because I can imagine some of my students, well, having convulsions if they went into an area where there wasn't any Wi-Fi. So, yeah, it would be it's a nice little catch as part of this world where the academy is, and it does even give us a little bit of that. Um, what is it? Duck out of water kind of feeling where they don't quite know the rules of the society because it doesn't fit with what they've grown accustomed to.
Oh, truly. There are a lot of wake-up calls that Shannon is going to have to go through, but this is all part of her planned growth, and that's her journey. But in the case of the other main character, Zadrian, he's already he's already seen as this powerful being that is like I mentioned, he's revered as a god, even though he insists otherwise. But his story isn't about trying to be the best, but rather to uncover something that caught his attention, and it's supposed to unravel another aspect of Shuxiang Academy's well, the place that where Shuxiang Academy takes place as a whole.
Okay, so well, I would find the first issue that I would have trouble with is, how do you write a good action scene that is martial arts? Uh,
Oh,
y-
so yeah.
that would probably kill me, because I just don't have the vocabulary, and I mean, action's always been difficult for me. So how about how do you handle it? How do you approach it?
So one of the biggest lessons that I've learned when writing Para Rene is that I'm too much of a show don't tell kind of storyteller, and after reading some works from other writers, I ended up realizing what my critics, I ended up understanding some pain or frustration that my critics had with me. So when I began writing the Parable of Shuxiang Academy, I took this as the opportunity to like really start fresh and put into play everything that Pararene was criticized for. So the Parable of Shuxiang Academy has a more straight to the point description, and like a much faster pacing to get you to help you like breeze through the story a little faster. But I also intentionally left a lot of like clues somewhere where like you can read between, like there are certain parts where if you read between the lines you may discover some hidden secret staring right in your face. But overall, the writing style of the Parable of Shuxiang Academy is more straight to the point, so you can breeze quickly. But there is showing on parts that I consider like important to take note of. Uh, and it's what else can I say? the action scenes in Shuxiang Academy are also fairly straight to the point. I keep everything straightforward with a lot of and use a lot of simple words to keep the audience from getting to hopefully keep the audience from getting confused. I
Okay.
would I would love it if you actually read the first fight scene in the Parable of Shuxiang. That would be maybe that's how I could. Well, I hope that could give you an idea, and I hope maybe you could it would show how I hope to improve.
Okay. Well, see, I mean, they're short. What I like to think of as short, stabby sentences. One of my eh, favorite writers, Ernest Hemingway, was known for like boiling everything down to very short, straight to the point sentences that he kind of got rid of any any of the more flowery prose because he just wanted to get to the heart of every statement that he made, and there were no wasted words in the way he wrote. And that sounds like a really interesting approach to take, especially if you're interested in constantly moving the action. I know for a lot of us, we tend to uh, get caught up in the being more descriptive.
Oh, yeah. I I I hope that I'm able to express that in the Parable of Shuxiang Academy. What was this about? Part of the process I go through when writing is I also recite each sentence aloud and see if I could actually say it without running out of breath. It's like I'm even if I don't know if I'll ever get an audiobook deal, but I'm already making preparations for such a thing if it were to ever happen. So, and I also try to, well, I've already mentioned keeping things straight to the point. So,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
I can understand trying to make things simplified because I I have a habit of the I can make very long sentences because a lot of the writers I grew up reading had very long sentences with lots of commas. Um, with they just keep you have clauses and everything, and you just can't finish the thought. And it took one of my editors to really get on me to break those up into separate sentences and not just constantly find a new place to throw a comma in there.
Admittingly, that is something I also struggle with, putting commas quite often in one sentence because when I read it aloud with the way I originally wrote it, it feels heart pounding to me, you're being you're really being pulled through the action and you're experiencing it in real time, and making separating that into breaking it down into multiple sentences. I feel sometimes ruins the momentum, but I try my best not to make uh, each sentence with a comma, not overdo it. At least maybe one or two commas, and hopefully that's just enough. That's like my limit. Three tops. But for the most part, I try to keep things with just a straight to the point sentence that doesn't encounter a comma. But you
Uh,
never. But you know me. I just sometimes I just want to make it look like I just want to make the reader experience something or feel something as close as possible to like the same flow of the action. So sometimes my commas feel like a must.
okay. Another question on the Academy story. So, is this a will we see if we get into it? Will we see any of the characters that we have seen in the other ones, or is this a direct prequel, or is this more just like a universe setting prequel?
Okay, so there is one character who was introduced in Parable of the Renegades Volume 1, who is also in the Parable of Shuxiang Academy. And this character actually mentions her time in Shuxiang Academy in Parable of the Renegades Volume 2. So she was kind of the link that brings these two together. And the Parable of Shuxiang, and and something I intentionally wrote about the Parable of Shuxiang Academy is that you don't need to have any knowledge of Parable of the Renegades in order to understand what's going on in Shuxiang Academy. The way I intend to write it is that Shuxiang Academy is its own story, its own culture that is separate from Parable of the Renegades, but the ending of Shuxiang Academy will tie in to the main story of Pararene.
Okay. All right. So you don't have to have any uh, depth of prior knowledge to get involved and invested in it.
Yeah,
The yeah. With Honeyfeed, I know some authors try and use the web novel format as I'm not going to say rough draft because before most of us show up anything to anybody, we've gone through like 3 drafts, but we use that as almost like a beta test site. We put it up there, we let comments happen, and we see if what we were attempting is getting across. Have you used web novels in that kind of format to try and
that
get some feedback?
that is exactly how I use it. The Parable of the Parable of the Renegades, Volume 1 and 2, are both available on Honeyfeed in their beta form, in their I guess their beta version, their unedited beta version. So you can get a taste of my writing style and hopefully provide you with feedback. And the same is going to be the case for the Parable of Shuxiang Academy. It's going to be the unedited version on Honeyfeed, but I hope I hope to get enough feedback and eventually publish it as an official release with illustrations and other good stuff that you can expect from a hard copy.
So this is a good conversation about writing. So what for you, what has it been that keeps you um, at the computer, keeps you pounding out words, keeps you torturing yourself because that's what writing is sometimes. What is it about this process that really keeps you involved in it?
There are times that I do feel down sometimes or like feel stuck in a slump, but one thing I always look forward to when writing is that once I actually get the words down and give the story I want to tell, I can't help but feel accomplished, even if it may not be the best. It might not be the best thing to read at the moment, because at the very least, one thing I like to remember is that you can always edit a bad chapter, but you can't do that to to a blank page.
Okay, so you can always edit a bad chapter, but you can't edit a blank page, which, yep, unless you're folding it into a paper airplane, I guess that's truly the case.
Oh, but this is electric though.
But the yeah, I've some of us create and we never share it with anybody, and we do it because we enjoy the process of telling stories, and I think a lot of us are storytellers to begin with, and it's a matter of trying to entertain someone or entertain yourself because you go back sometimes and you reread what you wrote and you surprise yourself. I mean,
Sometimes I find myself surprised that I actually wrote that part. Like sometimes when I read an old verse in the earliest chapters of Pararene Volume 1, I sometimes feel like, wait, did I really write it like that? Like I didn't I like this would be like a sentence that I never like I wouldn't think of on the fly when writing a draft. So
yeah, I'm famous for starting many a story and then going back to them and taking a look, and I read and I suddenly I'll start laughing out loud because I'm like, that was funny. I didn't know I could write funny like that, and it'd be like, this is a it's great when you can surprise yourself, especially when you put something on a shelf and then you bring it back down to give it a second look, and you're like, huh, I might have been onto something there.
oh man, you really yeah, that's some of the most pleasant surprise I tend to look forward to when writing. But just never know when it's going to happen. When it does, you just feel it and you just immerse yourself in it.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up this particular conversation right here. I want to thank you, and we'll be looking over at Honeyfeed, and then we'll be looking forward to full publication later. And to the listeners who are tuning in, please hit the like and subscribe button. Those clicks not only help the ego of this old reporter, but also show how much we can support the OELN community, because the more likes and the more shares, the more likely this video will be recommended to someone new. And that is what we want. We want to give more writers more exposure to get their works out there. So until next time on the OELN podcast, keep reading.
This has been a WLNM podcast.